Welcome to OurSport. I'm Larry. I'm your host. John, as always, doing the recording and editing. Week 11 had two huge showdown games. Penn State, undefeated, goes to undefeated Minnesota and loses. And the game everybody in the country is watching. LSU went to Alabama 2-3. We were lucky enough to be there for this game. This was John's birthday present. I'm not sure how much of the atmosphere really came across on TV. I haven't watched a TV feed. I'm assuming maybe you got the impression of how much energy was in the crowd, how much energy was in the stadium. I can tell you it was pretty riveting from being there. So Alabama goes down. Down 20 points at halftime, and you kind of got the feeling that they were really outclassed the whole time. That LSU is the better team. LSU looked more comfortable. LSU looked like, you know what, we get the ball, we're going to go down the field on you, and we're not going to be as pressured by your defense. We're not going to be harassed as much. You're not going to cause as many chaos plays. Bama seemed like they were struggling every time they dropped back to throw the ball. They had a good run game going. And so, what's it mean? What's it mean for the playoff? It means that LSU is in great position because LSU can lose a game now. LSU has so many big wins on their resume. Home against Florida, home against Auburn, at Texas, at Alabama, and still undefeated. And then they got this kid at quarterback who looks amazing. This guy looks like the Heisman winner. He's the front runner now. He looks like the first pick in the draft. He looks like Tom Brady in college. It's an amazing transformation from last year. And if they get to the SEC championship game and they're 12-0, they lose to Georgia, what's it matter? With all the wins on their resume, they should still be in a playoff. This absolutely looks like the best team in the country. They're going to be number one on our top 10. But Alabama, if you think about it, they saved their season because they played it close. That game was a 20-point deficit at halftime. Alabama comes back to make it more than cosmetically close. They had a lot of heart. They played a Warriors effort, a hero's effort. They really competed. And now what they can say is, despite a ridiculously soft schedule, is that, you know what, we barely lost that game. We lost that game close. And they can kind of talk the committee maybe into saying, well, let's keep them on the fringe of the playoff. Let's keep them as the number 4 team in the country. That's how the landscape of that dynamic is going to be. The second game, Penn State goes to Minnesota, and for the most part, looks kind of outclassed. You look at Minnesota's schedule, they're 8-0, and in all 5 of their Big Ten games that they played, they were playing the backup quarterback in all of these games. You look at their non-conference schedule, and when they opened the year, they were barely beating some of these teams. I mean, they were escaped South Dakota State, I think, in double overtime against an FCS team. So you're like, come on, the schedule is ridiculous. You're not a legit 8-0 team. Till you look at the games. You look at some of those games where they're beating these teams, admittedly, who are down at quarterbacks. That has nothing to do when they go out there and they're putting 52 points on another team's defense. That's Minnesota's offense. And they've got 2 great receivers. P.J. Fleck, the Minnesota head coach, was a former receiver himself at Northern Illinois. He's a former wide receivers coach. That's a specialty. And then you line up with one of the deepest backfields in the country, 3,000-yard backs, and then look at the offensive line. Daniel Falele from IMG Academy, not a joke, 6'9", 400-pound right tackle. The right tackle, Curtis Dunlap, same place, 6'5", 370, just mauling teams, coming off the ball and establishing the run, balancing the offense. You have to decide how you want to stop this team. You want to stop the run with their deep backfield and offensive line. The 2 receivers that Fleck is coaching are going to go up and down the field on you. And you have to talk about Tanner Morgan. 90% completion in this game. 90% completion, the biggest game of his career, and he had his best game. Says a lot about him, says a lot about the program. Is Minnesota going to go undefeated? You would say no, but what would you have said at the beginning of the year? Beginning of the year, you never said they were going to go 9-0 and beat an undefeated Penn State team. P.J. Fleck is an interesting coach. This is not the first time he's done this. He was at Western Michigan. He got them to John, what's that bowl game they played against Wisconsin? Cotton Bowl. Cotton Bowl, they're 13-0, MAC champs.
Minnesota? Oh no.
Western.
Okay, Western.
Pay attention, boy.
I'm sorry.
Okay. He got them 13-0 into the Cotton Bowl against Wisconsin. I mean, you can say it's only it's Western Michigan. They haven't had a season like that in 70, 80 years. And he gets to Minnesota, and they haven't had a season like this in 115 years. He does that at two different places. He's young. He's energetic. He's got a silly style you can make fun of, but that's a college style. And apparently that works. He's got he's almost the Tony Robbins of college football. He's got that overly infectious thing going on, and that works with college kids. And he could end up being the next coach at USC or the next coach at Florida State. They gave him a brand new extension. He's got a huge buyout. The extension means nothing. The extension it doesn't mean you can't hire him now. It just means it's going to cost you more money. He's made more money. Minnesota's going to make more when eventually somebody comes calling, because a team with deep pockets who wants to spend enough, like USC, will spend enough to get a coach to get them back to where they think they belong. Okay.
Hello. This is a complete surprise to you, to him. Usually he takes the leads on these duo segments. He had no idea I'm coming in and stealing all of his thunder. Now, a lot of times when we do these, we don't plan it. He just comes in.
We never plan it.
Surprise. Today we did. Today he said we were going to talk about the Redskins.
Well, we planned a topic, right.
Yeah. So I decided that I was going to surprise you with a topic today. Something a little bit different. He had no idea this was happening at all. So he has some unpopular opinions. He's talked about a few of these on the channel. Michigan is overrated. That was one of our debut episodes. But he hasn't
talked. Is that opinion or is that fact?
I mean, it turned out to be fact.
Okay.
But he has a lot of others that he hasn't talked about. And so I made a little mini list of players, teams, coaches that you think are overrated or underrated. And
all right.
I think we just need a little bit of explanation as to your reasoning behind some of these.
Come on with it.
This is college and NFL.
Come on.
Past and present.
Right.
The first one. In the NFL, Sean McVay, coach of the Rams, considered by many to be the face of the future, had a really good season last year, took his team to the Super Bowl, and you think he's overrated?
He is overrated.
Why?
Yeah. Well, first of all, he has a specific system where I have to defend myself completely on the fly. This was smart. And happy birthday. John's birthday today. He's 15. Okay.
Thank you.
You look at him. He uses the same personnel almost every time. He almost never varies his personnel. It's 11 personnel. It's 3 wide receivers. And he does give teams problems. But they're really relying on Cooper Kupp. Mm-hmm. Cooper Kupp is a huge piece of that arsenal. When he went down, they became a very average offense.
Yeah.
All right? Now, he did make a quarterback like Jared Goff. He got the most out of Jared Goff. Is he going to be next on this list?
No.
Okay. And he got the most out of Jared Goff, who does have some talent. But, man, what happened in we were at the Super Bowl. We were lucky enough to be at that game. You were there at the Super Bowl.
Yes.
This offensive genius, that's going to change the league. Every year there's a new offensive genius or a new scheme that's going to change the league and something that's never been seen in 100 years. What did he do when he met Bill Belichick? How many points?
3 offensive, right?
3 total. They got lucky to get 3 points.
Yeah.
He got his pants pulled down by Bill. Now, everything we talk about Bill Belichick, that's an unfair standard.
Yeah.
All right? But if you are the greatest offensive coach in the league, you're going to get, you can't get a touchdown. You can't get 1 touchdown, and you have 2 weeks to prepare.
Fair enough.
Okay.
All right. Now I'm going to go to the past. Keeping in the NFL.
Okay.
This is something that you've mentioned a few times in front of me, and I've always found this odd.
We're doing all overrated players and teams now?
Overrated and underrated.
Okay, got it.
Something you think.
All right.
A player, Barry Sanders, considered by many to be one of the greatest halfbacks of all time. A lot of people have him as like their 3rd greatest of all time, 4th greatest of all time, and you think he's a good back.
No, I think he's really good.
Really good. He's a great back. Yeah. But you definitely do not hold him to the same prestige as other people do.
Let me clarify. Running back is the deepest position in NFL history. You know, you could be the 10th greatest running back in NFL history, and it's debatable that you might still be first. There's been so many great running backs. Barry Sanders is a great running back. Barry Sanders is the most overrated running back in NFL history. Barry Sanders is the greatest NFL running back in highlights. Mm-hmm. His highlights will take your breath away. And you see the highlights, and you're like, oh my God, how is he not the greatest? Well, you watch a whole game. You watch a whole game where he played. Nobody ever lost more yards rushing than Barry Sanders. Nobody ever danced in the backfield and took more 4-yard losses than Barry Sanders. Okay? Nobody had as many poor playoff games or games and that mattered for a division title than Barry. When you needed him, all of a sudden he didn't produce. Now you can talk about his offensive line. People have, like, he didn't have a good offensive line, which is not true. He had a pretty good one. He had some players on there, Lomas Brown, that were not bad players. All right, so did he not have this offensive line the whole time he's getting 160 yards on the Buccaneers and getting 13 carries for 18 yards in playoff games? The same offensive line.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Also, he was this great. Let's say he's the greatest back in history, like people talk about. Would you give me another guy you would think was the greatest back in history?
Walter Payton.
Walter Payton. Walter Payton's on the goal. When you're on the goal line with the Bears, are you taking Walter Payton off the field?
No.
Barry Sanders
Never.
got pulled off the field in goal line plays. Why are you taking the greatest back in NFL history off the goal line and goal line plays?
Fair enough.
You want touchdowns, right?
Fair enough.
Okay.
All right. I see it.
Okay.
This is going to be our last one that you think was overrated.
Only three?
You've talked a little bit about this before.
Right.
Mentioned this. I want to talk about Georgia. You said about how you think Jake Fromm is overrated.
Yes.
But you didn't mention as much about Kirby Smart, who you call Kirby dumb.
I don't call him Kirby dumb. That's what I've said. I don't call him this. It's what the Georgia fans call him. I'm just repeating what they call him. When we live in Georgia, they're calling him Kirby dumb.
Okay.
Right.
And then Georgia is moving up in the top 25. You think they shouldn't be? Give some explanation as to that.
They're going to be higher in a playoff poll, I think, when it comes out than they deserve to be. Look at that South Carolina loss now. That was with a third-string quarterback for about half that game. They were at home. They couldn't beat a third-string. Look at Alabama. All right, Alabama has not played a great schedule, but Alabama's loss to a great team. Alabama's loss was by 5 points to the best team in the country. Everybody's agreeing with this, LSU?
Yeah, probably.
South Carolina, the best team in the country? They just lost App State. They're the one who put Tennessee in a bowl game. If Tennessee goes to a bowl game, which, the transitive property, Tennessee lost to BYU and Georgia State. If Tennessee goes to bowls because they beat South Carolina, Tennessee can beat South Carolina and Georgia can't. And I know Georgia beat Tennessee. I understand. But
it just proves why the transitive property isn't,
Jake
accurate.
Fromm was in this game. He threw 51 passes and he lost this game. Before the Florida game, anytime when Jake Fromm threw 30 or more passes, the Bulldogs were 0-5. Okay, so let's pick generic top 12, top 15 team. Give me one. Auburn. Okay, we're going to see it. I want you to picture this. Picture this in your mind if you're an Auburn fan. I'm going to say this. You're playing, I don't know, Clemson. You don't know anything about the game. I'm going to tell you this stat. Trevor Lawrence is going to complete attempt like Jake Fromm did against South Carolina. Trevor Lawrence is going to attempt 51 passes.
Oh, no. That's the first reaction.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
You're Iowa. You're going to play LSU. Joe Burrow is going to attempt 51. You, the viewer, pick your favorite college team. Imagine Joe Burrow attempting 51 passes against your team.
He's got 600 yards.
Right. How do you feel about it? Okay?
No.
So, but Jake Fromm attempted 51 passes in this game. Are you terrified when Jake Fromm's... You should be terrified. Yeah. This guy threw 51 passes against me. And the scouts are talking about him as a first-round pick. I don't see it. I think Jake Fromm is a good player. I don't know. I will say this. A lot of Georgia fans are upset that they let Justin Fields go to Ohio State.
Yeah.
And you watch Justin Fields. Jacob Eason to some extent. He's been pretty good for Washington. But you watch Justin Fields. And what that coach has done at Ohio State with Justin Fields, Georgia fans are mad because they think he's a lot better than Jake Fromm. And
probably.
It looks that way.
Mm-hmm.
It looks that way.
All right. Now, something you think are underrated. You talked about this a little on the road trip. It was a 4-hour drive to get to Tuscaloosa to watch the Alabama game.
And 5.5 to get out.
And 5.5 to get out.
Okay.
But on the drive there, we were talking football, and he mentioned something about UCLA, the UCLA Bruins.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Okay.
So UCLA is at this point 4-5, 3-5.
I believe they're 4-5.
They're a losing record.
Okay.
And you made.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's see you defend yourself now.
Okay.
You made the outstanding prediction that they're going to beat Utah, or at least you thought so, because your reasoning to some extent was Chip Kelly, right?
Right.
Right. And Chip Kelly did great things at Oregon, and they started to pick it up after their bye week. They got 3 wins in a row. I still don't see it.
Well, yeah, and it wouldn't surprise me if they lose to Utah. I just think they got a real good chance to beat them. Now, Utah's tough. Utah is physical, big, and well coached. But you got to look at UCLA. UCLA started 1-5. They've won 3 in a row since then. Teams are not the same. Teams are not. This is so much. I watched the first game they put against Cincinnati. UCLA did. Dorian Thompson-Robinson, their quarterback, terrible, fucking terrible. Could not complete the pass. Could not move the offense. And this is a different team now. It's going to take a while sometimes for a player to get the grasp of a coach's scheme, for a coach to implement a scheme, to find out which players work, the proper combination, the offensive line. What play am I going to use as a pass rusher? This guy's better than this other guy. The safety is a better coverage guy than I thought. He's not good in practice, and he's learning his team. So you just look at Chip Kelly's history. I just trust Chip Kelly as a college coach. I just can't see. Now, we're not talking about what he did with the Eagles or the Niners. I just can't see Chip Kelly just failing spectacularly at UCLA. And then, how do you start to get better? How do you come out of the blue and you're like, oh my God, they shocked Utah. Well, you win that game, you win a couple more at the end of the year. You're 8-5. It's not that much of a shock. Turns out you're a pretty good team. I think he had a bad start, and I just love the way he's developing his team, and the offense is so much better than the beginning of the year. It might have been a stretch to beat Utah. We got an argument. He would not let me go on this. So if UCLA beats Utah, okay, when Utah crushes UCLA, he said he's going to rub it in my face, but they're supposed to. So if UCLA beats Utah, what happens, smartass?
You're going to rub it in my face.
They're not supposed to beat Utah at all. Utah's dominant.
I really wanted that out there. I really wanted you to just.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Moving on from that. Keeping in college, another team that you think is underrated that not a lot of people are talking about is Kansas State. We watched them play against Mississippi State.
Right.
They controlled the ball really well. They beat Oklahoma.
Yeah.
They really handled them for most of the time. They were up by like 21 points at one point, or 20 points. Oklahoma made a run at it late. They almost actually got the onside, down by only 1 score. But you really, really like this Kansas State team, and you especially like their coach.
Yes.
Not a team that a lot of people are talking about, though.
No.
So what do you see in that team as to what they're doing that's making them so successful?
Well, you got to understand, Kansas State, you might be able to see it on the map. This is Manhattan, Kansas. All right? This is where Kansas State is. Over here is probably the nearest airport, about 2 hours away. This team cannot get players. This team is not like Oklahoma, who has as much tradition as them, Texas A&M, Texas. This team cannot get the players, come on in the picture, that those other programs can. So this team's got a ceiling. This team's always had a ceiling, and I thought Bill Snyder, the coach before it, Hall of Fame coach, excellent coach, achieved up to that ceiling. Well, you got a guy who's got to replace Bill Snyder, and the Bears apparently have bought in. And I think they lost to Texas yesterday.
Yeah, they did. They did.
6-3 in his first year, beating Oklahoma. Aside from one spectacular year where everything was right for Bill Snyder and he was at his peak, they don't go undefeated at Kansas State. No. You go undefeated at Ohio State and Florida. It happens. How hard it is to go undefeated? And so 6-3 would have won over Oklahoma in your first year.
Yeah.
You're coaching your ass off.
Yeah.
You're coaching your ass off. He's doing a great job. So I also go back to his history. I don't know. This guy was an FCS coach, a lower level coach. He won 4 national titles at North Dakota State, home of Carson Wentz. So I don't know. I wouldn't rather have a championship coach from that lower level than a hot assistant. I mean, you've got some guys in there. Jim Tressel came from there. Brian Kelly came from there. Lance Leipold of Buffalo came from there. Craig Bowl at Wyoming. Those guys are doing good jobs there at where they are. Lance Leipold came from like Division III. So when you've got a guy who's been a head coach before, are we going off on a tangent? They've got experience about running a program. And that's what Kleiman is. He's run a program before. He hasn't run an offense. He's run an entire program. And I just have a lot of respect for his ability. It's not easy to win 4 national titles at any level. You've got some acumen to what you're doing. The Oklahoma win proved that, and they're a physical team.
Yeah.
They're a physical team. They got their most out of their quarterback.
Yeah. All right, so last one here. Another person that you think is underrated. We're going to go to the NFL now. You talk about this a lot. You really have a liking to Phillip Rivers, for the quarterback from the Chargers.
Right.
He hasn't won a Super Bowl. When most people list the top 5 quarterbacks in the league right now, he doesn't make the list. Some people have him as like 10th greatest quarterback in the league, or somewhere around that area. A lot of people don't have him as one of the top quarterbacks right now, or really over the past 17 years
in his career.
But you really think he's been really good, and that he's borderline Hall of Famer to like in that caliber of player.
I just think he's definitely a Hall of Famer.
Yeah. So you want to give a little explanation as to
Sure.
why everyone's so low on him and you're high?
I don't know. You look at him, and you could say he's got almost an exact similar career to Matt Ryan. Productive, produces a bunch of stats, an accumulator instead. No, you may love Mr. Matt Ryan. Produces a bunch of stats, has had some good weapons, and has not come up big in big games. But there's something really, if you follow the Chargers, which not a lot of people do, there's something really weird about this franchise the whole time he's been there. No team has found more really weird ways to lose than the Chargers. And I don't think Rivers has ever beaten the Patriots. I think he's literally 0-12. That's a knock on him. I would never put him up there with the very best quarterbacks. I put him a tier below. There's something about him that he just seems to rally teams. They don't seem to quit. When they had a horrible, he comes off a horrible game against the Raiders Thursday, so make me look good. But it's
the point.
Throughout the whole entirety of his career, the guy's just been a good player. He never gets hurt. They're in every game with him. He's very productive. Let me give you the best example. They've had dozens of strange losses. I'm not kidding in his career, dozens. Let me give you the best example. One year, they were number one in the NFL in offense. Pretty good. He's part of that. They were also number one in the NFL in defense statistically. They had the top offense and defense in the entire league. Didn't make the playoffs because they had historically, how hard it is to have number one offense and defense on the same team. I think the 87 49ers did it. It's almost impossible. And historically also, they had the worst special teams in the history of the league that year.
Oh,
They had 7 punts blocked. They were missing field goals. They were allowing kick returns, touchdowns. Who has that in the same year? You're completely dominating on both lines on both sides of the ball. They say special teams is a third of the game. It's not a third of the game because it's not a third of the snaps. It's a sixth of the game. But they were an abject disaster on special teams, and they finished 9-7 and could not make the playoff. What does he have to do with guys not being able to block punts? A pretty well-regarded special teams coach where everything just collapsed. What do you have to do with guys missing field goals and guys giving up kick return yards? Is that any? And they've had a bunch of losses like this, where he'll hand it off to the running back. The guy's going in to score when they're down by 4, and all of a sudden he'll fumble at the 1 yard line. Just all kinds of stuff. They're almost inventing weird ways to lose. So I think the point is that he has been star-crossed, cursed almost. It's really bizarre what's happened to him in his career. They're losing not necessarily sometimes because of him, but a lot of times he's the only reason they're in the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The series of unfortunate events over there in the Chargers organization.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add on or say?
No, I'm going to have a segment. I'm going to surprise you with a segment next time, smartass. So thanks for this. Happy birthday.
All right.
I love you.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Okay. So Arkansas just fired their coach, Chad Morris. That was an abject disaster, his tenure there. He was 0-14 in the SEC. They haven't beaten an SEC team in 2 years. And as a coach, going back to SMU, he's never beaten a Power 5 team. He had a good run at SMU. It was a good fit. It just didn't work out. Now, who do you hire when you're in Arkansas? Why don't you go get Joe Brady? Why don't you go get the offensive coordinator from LSU? One of the things we noticed is that when we were watching Joe Burrow is very, very good. A lot of times, though, his receivers were schemed open. He's sure making plenty of tight window throws. And he's putting the ball into small spaces precisely. Other times, his guys are schemed wide open. Joe Brady has an NFL background. He's only been a one-year assistant. He had very few credentials before that, but it's been a spectacular year. It's been unbelievably productive. Spectacular is the best way to put it. Florida State opened up. They fired head coach Willie Taggart after a year and a half. So here's what you have to understand about Florida State. Florida State is different than Florida. Your grandfather went to Florida. Your grandmother went to Florida State. This was a girls' school for a while, a co-ed school. Doesn't have the 100-year tradition of really men going there and going into more lucrative fields A lot of times women would go there and then be caretakers of the home, and they don't have this vast alumni base, this moneyed base like Florida does. Florida's going to sell out every game. Florida State, they usually don't even sell out their stadium unless it's a big game like Miami. So what does that mean? That means that you don't have financially the resources that, despite your history and tradition and ability to win, the money is a factor. They have to pay a huge amount to Willie Taggart to buy his contract out. And if they get another coach in there, they have to pay potentially that coach's buyout at his school, as well as Taggart's buyout, before they even pay the new coach his salary and a salary for his staff, whatever his demands are. So yeah, tough times. So what that means is that Bob Stoops is going to be a serious candidate, because Bob Stoops is not a current coach, doesn't have a buyout, and that's been the talk about why they want to hire Bob Stoops, who of this recording, they have not made a coaching hire. And Bob Stoops is significant in terms of their interest because they don't have to pay the buyout for him. That is, I think, is the biggest factor. He's got a good history as a coach. That's, of course, also part of it. So, here's the OurSport Top 10 for the week. The top 3 teams are separating themselves, I think, from everybody else, and LSU might be separating themselves from everybody in the country. I really can't believe the transformation they've undergone in 1 year on offense. Really, the kind of story is that they're not really as good on defense. Neither is Alabama. We have Alabama at number 6 right now, and you watch that game, and they could not get stopped when they needed to. They could not tackle well. They have a lot of injuries, especially at linebacker. That's a problem. But these are both of these teams out. They're both LSU and Alabama. When you become a Big 12 style offense, you become a Big 12 style defense. You have trouble stopping people on defense. You're playing against a finesse offense in practice. You're not tackling as much. You're not facing as many strong running games. So that's something to consider. Utah, we have as number 4. Utah's physical on both sides of the ball. They've had no problems with really anybody. They've faced teams that were doing well until they played Utah. Teams that could score until they got to the Utes. The only team that gave them a real issue was USC, who just out-athleted them. The problem with that is when you get to the playoffs, they're all going to be able to out-athlete Utah. Until we see it, though, we have them as number 4. You'll see Minnesota and Baylor also enter our top 10, and we don't know how long they're going to stay in there. So thanks, everybody, for joining us. If you have a player or a team you want to talk about, feel free to leave a question in the comments. We'll try to get to it. We had a reader ask us to talk about Chase Young, and we might have cursed him because as soon as we did, he became suspended by the Ohio State Buckeyes for, I believe, some sort of improper violations. All of our social networks, social media are listed below. Feel free to join us on Facebook, on Twitter, contact us at email. Thanks for watching us this week, and we'll see you guys next week.